Matt DiBenedetto's future continues to remain uncertain, as it sounds like he will not be joining Kaulig Racing in 2024, and Kyle Busch has a new sponsor and reveals what happened to end his tenure at Joe Gibbs Racing. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to your video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show straight those really quickly. We're going to first go ahead and take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last few days. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2024 brand scheme. I like the scheme in my opinion. I like the green. I like the orange. Everything about the scheme looks really solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack throughout 2024. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Briscoe's 2024 Mahindra scheme. This scheme looks pretty good in my opinion, kind of similar to the scheme from the last couple of years. Been a little bit of a change to the scheme for 2024. Nonetheless, I think it looks really solid and pretty good, in my honest opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Bilicki's 2024 Ziegler scheme that we're going to see in the Xfinity Series opener at Daytona. I like this paint scheme a lot. Very similar to the Carson Hocevar one and very similar to the ones that he's had in the past with Spire. I think this scheme looks really good, in my honest opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Hill's 2024 50th anniversary betting scheme that we will see throughout the 2024 season. I really like this scheme. I love the blue. I like the gold tint they've got on the scheme this year. Overall, love the 50th anniversary scheme that we're going to see throughout 2024. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christopher Bell's 2024 Ream scheme. This scheme looks pretty good in my opinion. It's not perfect. I think the side quarter panel could have done a little more on that. That's one of the issues of Joe Gibbs Racing is the fact they haven't added a lot to that side quarter panel. Other than that, though, I like the black and I like the white. It's interesting look in my opinion, and I'm excited to see it out on the racetrack in 2024. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael Lindell's 2024 Margaritaville scheme that we are going to see at the Los Angeles Coliseum in 2 weeks. This paint scheme honestly looks really solid and really incredible. I'm really glad to see Margaritaville is going to be sponsoring Michael McDowell in 2024 at the Los Angeles Coliseum. Looks pretty good, in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece's 2024 United Rental scheme that we'll see throughout 2024. This one looks a little different than the 2023 scheme. I actually like the 2023 edition a little more than the 2024 edition. It doesn't look bad, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't look absolutely great. I like the 2023 edition, but that is my opinion on that. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Elliott's 2024 Napa White scheme that we're going to see at the Los Angeles Coliseum. I really love the all-white scheme that we're going to be seeing from Chase Elliott. I think it looks absolutely amazing in my opinion. The white looks great. I would love to see this, especially at night races. I would love to see this scheme run a lot more. It looks really good. The blue one looks great too, but I really love the white one, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack at the Los Angeles Coliseum. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Gear Wrench. As it was announced yesterday that Gear Wrench will in fact be sponsoring Legacy Motor Club in 2024 and has confirmed they likely will not be returning to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. Another big sponsorship loss for Stewart-Haas Racing, but another big sponsorship gain from Legacy Motor Club. We know the Family Dollar and Dollar Tree are going to be sponsoring Legacy in 2024 for a ton of races. We do know, of course, that Abbott Health is going to be joining to sponsor Eric Jones and Legacy. And now we know that Gear Wrench is joining the team. Really exciting stuff. Glad to see a new company working with Legacy Motor Club, a team that I think there's a lot of hype around. I can't wait to see what the paint schemes look like when they do officially get revealed. I think this is absolutely huge and massive for them in general to be sponsored by Legacy Motor Club. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Flow Racing. As it was reported by Adam Stern last night that according to him, Flow Sports says that nearly 20% of its total customer base subscribe to Flow Racing, being the third largest of the Flow Sports group. Obviously, Flow Racing has a lot of racing on there. You can spend, I think, $150, $160 a year, but you get a lot for your buck. You get the Chili Bowl. You get a ton of events like the High Limit Racing Series now. I think World of Outlaws might be on there if I'm not mistaken. And you also do get events like the Snowball Derby, among other major events that do go on to Flow Racing. In general, I think this is a really great service. It's growing quickly, and I think it's very awesome service. I haven't been able to really use it much before because of the money, unfortunately, but from what I hear, the Flow Racing subscription service is absolutely awesome, and I'm definitely looking forward to see what happens with Flow Racing long term. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 3Chi. As it was reported by Adam Stern last night that 3Chi is hoping to be back at Richard Childress Racing in 2024. Now, obviously, we'll talk about why they're likely not right now there in just a little bit, but 3Chi have been a sponsor of RCR, I believe, since 2020 or 2021. And honestly, seeing the Kyle Kush schemes that we've seen over the last couple of years, last year I should say, I've absolutely enjoyed them. And I've also liked the Tyler Reddick schemes that have been out as well. I really hope 3Chi does make a comeback this year with them at some point in the 2024 season, because if they were back, I think we would see some really nice looking and some pretty phenomenal paint schemes. So hopefully they do make a return in 2024 at some point, whether associate, maybe they sponsor another team, I'm not entirely sure. But I really hope we do get to see a 3Chi car again, because Kyle Busch's most recent win came in a 3Chi car, so maybe, just maybe, they go. Maybe they leave and go like the 2311 Racing and sponsor someone like Bubba Wallace. I thought that was going to happen when Tyler Reddick, to be honest, I thought it was going to happen when Tyler Reddick went over to work with 2311 Racing. So hopefully we will get to see them stick around in the sport, and maybe they sponsor someone like a Bubba Wallace in the future if they don't go back to Richard Childress Racing. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Starcom Racing. Now, if you were on social media yesterday, you probably saw a little bit of a teaser from Starcom Racing. According to potential reports, Starcom Racing may be making a return to former racing in the next couple weeks. Now, according to ARCA Star and Park Car reporter Colby Evans, apparently Starcom Racing is not making a return to NASCAR, ARCA, Xfinity, or Trucks, or the Cup Series. So my big question is, what is Starcom doing? Well, my speculation is that Starcom Racing, they are going to be going and racing in the Trans Am Series. If I'm not mistaken, over the last year or two, Derek Cope has been racing in the Trans Am Series, and I think that might be where Starcom Racing is coming back. Another reason why I don't think Starcom Racing is fully coming back to NASCAR is because basically of the fact that the reason I don't think they're coming back is because they sold a lot of stuff off to the money team. That's why you still see the money team around, because Starcom, that money team, kind of used to be the Starcom organization. So I don't think they're going to be coming back to NASCAR. I think that they will be going to the Trans Am Series, which I think will be very interesting and kind of cool overall. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. As it was announced a couple days ago, the Las Vegas Grand Prix will once again start at 1 a.m. Eastern in 2024. There have been a lot of chatter. They've been talking about maybe making the Las Vegas Grand Prix start a little bit later, actually earlier, I should say, but unfortunately they decided to stay with the same time. And of course, the biggest reason why they're staying at the same time in 2024 is because of the fact that it makes a little bit more sense for them with the UK audience. I still believe that they should have started the race a little bit earlier. My personal opinion is they should have started the race, I think, at like 12 a.m. Eastern maybe, or 11 p.m. Eastern. That's probably when they should have actually started the race, instead of when they're actually starting the race in 2024, because in my opinion, more people are going to tune in. Granted, a lot of people did stay up to watch the Las Vegas GP, but I think overall they should go ahead and make it a little bit earlier next year in 2025. Unfortunately, they're not changing it for 2024. I think there's a 3-year deal, or a 10-year, definitely a 3-year deal, but they could extend it to a 10-year deal. So hopefully they do decide to go ahead and make the event a little bit earlier starting time in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Madrid. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday that Madrid will likely be added to the Formula One schedule, with an announcement sometime expected in the next week. According to reports from what they actually use the article from, it sounds like an announcement will be happening next week, and it will be in the streets of Madrid. Confirming that there will likely be 2 races in the area, though I'm not sure if Catalonia would come back in 2025, because it's not going to be added on the schedule in 2024, considering the season is not that far away from starting. This would be for 2025. This would be another race added on to the Formula One schedule, and will continue the F1 schedule getting longer and longer and longer, because if I'm not mistaken, this year's Formula One schedule is 24 races, and if they add Madrid and don't remove any of the races coming into the season, it is going to be a 25 race schedule. I'm starting to feel like these schedules in Formula One are starting to get very, very long. We've complained about as NASCAR fans how long their season is, and now it's starting to get to the point where the F1 seasons are getting a lot longer as well. So it's very interesting to look at as well, and it sounds like Madrid will be added to the F1 schedule in 2025. In the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dylan Francis. As it was announced, I believe, on Wednesday that Dylan Francis will be performing a pre-race DJ set at the Los Angeles Coliseum. For those who don't know Dylan Francis is, if you ever heard the song like Get Low with DJ Snake and a couple other songs that he has released for years, Dylan Francis has been around for a very, very long time and is also a proponent streamer that is streaming people like Ninja. So Dylan Francis has been around for quite a long time, so it's really cool to see that he's getting the chance and opportunity to do some pre-race DJing here at the Los Angeles Coliseum in a couple weeks from now. I think it's a very interesting move. They're going to be bringing him in for 2024. I do like the move overall. Nonetheless, I'm glad to see that Dylan Francis will get to do some DJing here at the Los Angeles Coliseum in a couple weeks down the road. I'm looking forward to that, and nonetheless glad to see that he will get to do some DJing in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tommy Joe Martins. As Tommy Joe Martins basically confirmed on Twitter yesterday that he will be racing in 2024. Now, Tommy Joe Martins did not confirm where he will be racing at in 2024. My speculation is that Tommy Joe Martins more than likely is going to be racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series on his own organization in the number 45 car for Alpha Prime Racing. Considering the fact that Alpha Prime Racing does have two full-time entries, Ryan Nelson in the 43 car and Brendan Poole in the 44 car, I would have to think that the 45 car more than likely is where he'd go. We know that Cesar Baccarello, who is a co-owner of this organization, is also going to make a couple select starts. I believe the last time Tommy Joe Martins did race in NASCAR was either in 2022 or 2021, so it has been a couple years since we have seen him race. In general, I really can't wait to see what he's going to do in 2024 and where he actually is going to race. So I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to seeing him get a chance to race again in 2024, and we'll see where he does, in fact, race in NASCAR in 2024. But if you want my speculation, I think he'll be racing with Alpha Prime Racing in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Noah Gragson. As there were some tweets that have been coming out very, very recently, and it looks like Noah Gragson does, in fact, have a new sponsor going into 2024. That new sponsor is a sponsor that's already been at Stewart-Haas Racing, that's been sponsoring Chase Briscoe, and other drivers have driven before with the team, and that is Rush Truck Centers. Now, if you look at the fire suit, there are some packages that are still available for potential sponsorship to come into play, and we don't know what other sponsors are going to be coming into play for Noah Gragson in 2024. But if you want my honest speculation, I think Rush Truck Centers will probably be one of a couple sponsors that Noah Gragson will have in 2024. My biggest guess is Black Rifle Coffee, despite the fact they haven't been announced yet. I would imagine that they still have a really good chance of coming over and working with Noah in 2024. But the fact we're getting close to the start of the season and they haven't been announced yet definitely concerns me. Now, again, Rush Truck Centers has not announced how many races they are going to sponsor the number 10 car this season, but I have to imagine it'll be a little bit more, considering I think Mahindra could be upping how much they are going to be sponsoring Chase Briscoe this season. So we'll see what happens in regards to that, but I find it interesting that it looks like Noah Gragson may, in fact, finally have some sponsorship for 2024, and it's already with the company that's already been with the team before. So we may be seeing them sponsor him in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ford. As it was reported by Joseph Strigley and many reporters in the industry that Ford will debut the Mustang Dark Horse in the NASCAR Xfinity Series opener at Daytona International Speedway. The drivers that are confirmed to be driving in this car are Haley Deegan in the 15 car, Cole Custer in the 00, Riley Herbst in the 98, All three RSS full-time cars, that of course being Kyle Sieg, Ryan Sieg, and then of course I think Blaine Perkins. And then of course you have a couple other organizations that could be working with this dark horse in 2024. Now keep in mind, it is just the decals. They're going to be debuting the decals. They're not debuting the new car itself. I believe the Cup Series will be debuting the new car in 2024 in the Clash, and then, of course, at the Daytona 500. It's very interesting to see, though, that Ford is going to be debuting the new decals of the Ford Mustang Dark Horse body with all the drivers that I've mentioned and announced. And I think it's really cool that they are going to be debuting it there. I think that showing off to a pretty big audience, despite the fact that the Xfinity Series doesn't have as big of an audience as the Cup Series. I think, in general, I think it's a really, really good move for them to do this, and overall, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how it plays out for them going into 2024, how successful the new Ford is going to be. I would imagine that they're going to still be using the Ford Mustang body, the old kind of fashion one, for the Xfinity Series for a majority of the year, but I think it's pretty cool they'll be using the Ford Mustang Dark Horse body at least for the opener at Daytona. I think it's really exciting and really interesting overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, SVG put out a tweet yesterday. We're kind of talking about production days. And if you take a look at some of the people that he tagged in the tweet, it shows Red Bull. And you actually tagged Red Bull Motorsports. If you take a look at the helmet as well, there is a Red Bull helmet. Now, if you've been paying attention for a long time, Shane Van Gisbergen has been working with Red Bull for many, many years. They sponsored him for a majority of his races in supercars and also were a big partner with him when he won the race at the Chicago Street Course. A lot of people believe that because Red Bull has been around a lot more, and this is not the first photo we've seen him with Trackhouse Racing, many do speculate that he is going to have that as a sponsor at some point in 2024. Now, again, I don't think it'll be a full-time sponsor. I think if they do sponsor him and have a livery for his car, I think it'll be for probably 1 or 2 races in the season. Again, I think Red Bull really wants to continue working with SVG, and this also could just be a partnership that they've had with SVG that's not going to count within them sponsoring a car. But I have to imagine that there's a really good chance and possibility that Red Bull is, in fact, going to sponsor him in at least one of the races in 2024. We know that Wendy's is going to be sponsoring 2 of his Cup races and 1 of his Xfinity races, and this could also lead to him running in the Xfinity car as the sponsor on his Xfinity car with Kaulig Racing as well. In general, it's very interesting to see that we continue seeing more Red Bull around. They've been tagged a lot, and I think there's a good chance and possibility that we may see Red Bull sponsor them at some point in 2024. It hasn't been confirmed exactly how many races, but it looks to me like they'll be sponsoring for some races in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about David Gravel. Now, Matt Weaver put out a little bit of a tweet and article in regards to David Gravel. And according to this, David Gravel had Kyle Larson not come along and had what happened in 2020 happen to him, and had he not been available, that David Gravel could have been the driver in the number 5 car instead of Kyle Larson. If you all remember back in 2020, David Gravel got an opportunity to drive for GMS Racing in the number 24 truck. And he did a very solid job in his first start, finishing in 10th, and only had a couple opportunities to race in the number 24 car. Unfortunately, it was a really bad time and circumstances for this to happen because eventually Kyle Larson became available, and Kyle Larson went to take that number 5 seat. And look what Kyle Larson has been able to do since that point. Now, obviously, David Gravel and Kyle Larson, I think, are pretty good friends, so I don't think David Gravel really is mad at Kyle Larson about this, all things considered. But still, when you look at it, it would have been very interesting to see David Gravel in a Hendrick car instead of Kyle Larson. Now, do I think that David Gravel would have been as successful as Kyle Larson was? No, absolutely not. Despite the fact that some people disagree with me, I think that Kyle Larson is one of the best race car drivers we have ever seen in the history of motorsports and in NASCAR as well. And I think Larson is going to be one of the winningest drivers in NASCAR history before his career comes to a close and an end. But still, I think it's very interesting to see that basically Kyle Larson, had he not been available, we could have had David Gravel driving in a NASCAR Cup Series car instead of, Kyle Larson. We could have had David Gravel driving in the 5 car, the 48 car, taking over for Jimmy Johnson had it been able to be very successful. I really hope David Gravel does get another chance and opportunity to race in NASCAR in the not-so-distant future because I think he deserves an opportunity. I think he deserves a shot. And maybe, just maybe, in the not-so-distant future, we could see David Gravel come back and get another opportunity shot to race in NASCAR, because I think he does deserve another chance and opportunity to race in NASCAR, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Colton Herta. As it was reported by Jenna Fryer yesterday that according to her, Colton Herta at the IMSA Media Days for the Rolex 24, he revealed to her that he tried to land a Daytona 500 ride for 2024, but unfortunately was not able to find a ride for 2024. This is very interesting because if you've been paying attention over the last couple of years, Colton Herta has shown a lot of interest and has stated that he wants to run in NASCAR at some point. A couple years ago, he stated he wanted to run in the truck race at Eldora back in 2018 or 2019. He said he wanted to do that. And over the last year or two, go back to 2022, where he stated back a couple years ago that he was interested in wanting to run in NASCAR. Now, obviously, Colton Herta, there aren't a lot of rides that were going to be available to begin with. So I think about what rides could have been available for him. One of those teams I would have to imagine is Spire Motorsports. But, of course, Spire Motorsports has 3 full-time entries. You got Zane Smith in the 71. You, of course, do have basically Carson Osborne in the 77. And Kroe LaJoie in the 7. We already know the Spire has a really good connection with Andretti Global. So maybe he could have driven for that team, but I'm not entirely sure. You also do have 2311 Racing. I know 2311 Racing in the past indicated they could run another car, the third car again. But, and Colton Herta does, of course, drive for Honda, which I think is a little rival to Toyota. If Colton had driven for 2311 Racing, been teammates with Bubba Wallace, and then, of course, a couple of drivers like Tyler Reddick, and maybe would have been helping with Kurt Busch as well. Maybe if Carl Edwards came back and worked with the team. But, of course, I don't think that was going to be the case. So at this point, maybe the money team came into play, but again, the money team, that wouldn't be a fast car to go to. Just ask Connor Daly. He would know he didn't get to run all the race he wanted to because I think sponsorship fell through and they stopped sponsoring him. So in general, when I look at Colton Herta, I really hope he gets a chance and opportunity, maybe in the not-so-distant future, to get another chance to run in NASCAR again. He hasn't run a NASCAR race before, so I really hope someone takes a chance on him and maybe gets the opportunity to once again run the Daytona 500 for the first time, because I want to see more of this crossover coming into play. Hell, Spire opens up a 4th car. Maybe Colton Herta goes there and drives a 4th car. That could definitely be an option for them if they decide to do that. Because I know the Spire is one of those teams that wants to expand. Hell, maybe if Junior Motorsports, if they wanted to make the jump up, maybe they could sponsor Colton Herta. So it's very interesting to take a look at for sure, and interesting that Colton Herta kind of say that he tried to get a Daytona 500 ride, but unfortunately it fell through. I really hope someone gives him a chance and opportunity to work with him in the future, and maybe we'll see Colton Herta not too far down the road get the chance and opportunity to run the Daytona 500, because I think he deserves a chance and opportunity to run in the Daytona 500. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about AM Racing. As it was reported by TobyChristie.com that AM Racing will not field the number 25 car full-time in 2024, as the points from the 25 car will be transferred over to Hailie Deegan for the 2024 season. Meaning that they'll only have the 15 car that Hailie Deegan's going to be driving for full-time this year, and the 25 car will, according to Jonathan Field from the Racing Experts, they are still planning to run the 25 car at some point in 2024, but it will not be full-time in the 2024 season. So this also confirms more than likely that Brett Moffitt is out of a ride going into 2024, which is a great shame. Obviously, there are rumors and reports that Matt DiBenedetto could have been going to this team full-time in 2024. Maybe he could still go here part-time in 2024, but I have to imagine at this point that probably isn't going to happen. At this point, what I'm thinking, this is probably going to be an all-star car for drivers at Stewart-Haas Racing, and if drivers that are aligned with them as well. So maybe Chase Briscoe runs here at some point. Maybe we do see a couple other drivers from SHR. Noah Gragson get a chance to drive an Xfinity again with this team. Maybe we do see Ryan Preece get to drive this car. I also think about some of Ford's development drivers that get a chance and opportunity. I think that at this point, when you look at the 25 car, it's not going to run full-time this year, which is disappointing. They're planning to run a little bit later this year. I would imagine probably 10 to 15 races is the goal. And maybe still Brett Moffitt gets a chance and opportunity to run with this team at some point. But as of right now, the plan is for this team to not run this car full-time in 2024. And it's definitely very, very unfortunate because I think this team absolutely deserves a chance and opportunity to run 2 full-time cars. They actually stated a few weeks ago they were going to run this car, well, about a month or 2 ago, they were going to have 2 full-time cars. I guess funding may have driven up for this car to run the full season. Brett Moffitt doesn't bring a lot of sponsorship, unfortunately, but I really hope they do get to run this car full-time because I think it'd be really good for the sport if we do get to see this car run full-time, because I think a lot more people would be happy if this car got to run the whole entire season. And we'll see if it ever happens, whoever gets to drive this car. But right now, this car, as of now, will not be running full-time in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. So this is a story that kind of went under the radar, but if you were on Sirius on NASCAR Radio a couple days ago, Chris Rice was on there. And basically he told, I believe it was Dave Moody, that according to them, they are not planning to sell their charters and they're not for sale for the next 24 months. But according to what they said in that same interview, he says they are actually looking for new partners. This is very, very interesting and a kind of an interesting timetable when you really look at it because they're saying they're not going to be available for the next 24 months, indicating they probably have had some talks and conversations about selling their charters, but they've also stated in the past that they do want to expand to a 3 or 4 car organization. Now, obviously, one thing I just mentioned a second ago is they are looking for new partners. What do I mean by that? Well, they're looking to probably bring some people from private equity firms in to work with them. Look what Joe Gibbs Racing did. They got Harris Blitzer coming in to work with them last year, and they're bringing a lot of money in capital in and some new sponsorship for the team as well. I look at Spire Motorsports, who's getting a lot of help from Gamebridge. That's a private equity firm that's coming in, and Andretti's really now involved with them because of that. I think when you look at Kaulig Racing, I think they probably have been approached by some teams. Now, what teams could they approach them? I think Junior Motorsports could have been one of them for sure. But Dale Jr. also stated publicly that he's not going to basically go and buy a charter for $40 million. So as much as I think we all want Junior Motorsports to make the jump up the cup, I don't think that is going to happen at this particular moment right now. Well, maybe it does happen like in 2025, but Dale Jr. is not going to spend $40 million on a charter. The other team I think about is Trackhouse Racing, and I think one of the other ways that we could see something happen is Trackhouse working with Kaulig and Trackhouse maybe purchasing Kaulig Racing altogether and Kaulig falling into the Trackhouse umbrella in the Cup Series, where you have Kaulig Racing being like the development team for Trackhouse drivers like Connor Zalich and SVG are there, and then those guys eventually would go into the Trackhouse camp. And Trackhouse can be a 4-car team because we know that Trackhouse Racing does want to eventually be a 4-car organization, and they have a lot of drivers under contract. You've got Ross Chastain, you got Daniel Suarez, you've got Zane Smith, you've also got SVG, you've got Connor Zalich is under contract, and you would have other drivers that could fall under contract if they went over to Trackhouse. It's going to be very interesting to see how things kind of look at the moment. They're not planning to sell their charters in Cup. They probably had conversations before. It'll be very interesting to see how things kind of fall out and what happens long-term down the road. But as of right now, Kaulig Racing is not planning to sell their team or their charters anytime soon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rajah Caruth. And Rajah put out a little bit of a teaser tweet indicating that he will be announcing his 2024 plans soon. Now, where could Rajah Caruth be headed in 2024? Well, a lot of people, including myself, have been speculating that Rajah Caruth more than likely will be headed to Spire Motorsports in 2024. Spire Motorsports is reported will have 3 full-time entries in 2024 in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. We know that Chase Purdy is going to be driving the 77 truck full-time, and we also know that Nick Sanchez will have an alliance with Rev Racing, which in the 2-truck of Rev Racing, which of course will have an alliance with Spire Motorsports in 2024. I believe that Rajah is headed to Spire Motorsports for multiple different reasons. Number one, Spire Motorsports has worked with Rajah Caruth in the past. He actually made his NASCAR Truck Series debut with the team and made a couple select starts with the team back in 2022. And of course, he's been rumored to this team for the last couple months, as even before the Kyle Busch Motorsports purchase, he's been linked to this team. So I think that you're going to see Rajah Caruth there. I also think there's a chance he could drive part-time for Henry Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series if they do decide to bring back that part-time program that they ran in 2023. We saw Rajah make 1 start with them. He actually finished 14th in his first start with that team, which is pretty impressive. I would love to see him get a chance to do that again. But at this particular moment and point, I think that Rajah Caruth will in fact be headed over to Spire Motorsports in 2024 in the Craftsman Truck Series. Again, I don't know exactly what number he's going to be driving. We'll hopefully have that announcement soon because we're getting really close to the end of the off season. We're, I think, 30 days away. We're actually only 4 weeks away from the Truck Series opener and 30 days from the Daytona 500. So hopefully here really, really soon we'll get some more information on Roger Kroe, but it sounds like it won't be too far down the road before we find out an official announcement of what is going on with Roger Kroe for 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Marco Andretti. As it was announced yesterday that Marco Andretti will be joining Cook Racing Technologies in 2024 in the Truck Series and the ARCA Series in 2024. He'll run 7 truck races with Roper Racing, which Roper Racing will have in a partnership with Cook Racing Technologies. Confirmed will be in the number 04 truck, and he'll run 14 races in ARCA in 2024. This is actually really, really awesome and amazing to see. Marco Andretti did make a couple select truck series starts in 2023. Didn't run absolutely amazing in those select starts, but didn't do absolutely awful either. Then he got some top 24 performances going. Ran 3 truck races last year, drove the 7 truck at Phoenix, drove it at Homestead, and then of course made his debut in Mid-Ohio. I believe he actually made the final round of qualifying in Mid-Ohio with Spire Motorsports. Roper Racing, of course, they've worked with Cook Racing Technologies in the past because I believe Landon Lewis has driven for this team as well, and I believe that he drives for Cook Racing Technologies in ARCA, so that's why they're partnering up with Roper Racing this season. So what are my realistic expectations for Marco? Well, my realistic expectations for Marco is to gain as much experience as possible in the stock car form, which you of course racing in ARCA, racing 14 races there. I think that's really good for ARCA to have someone as big, high profile as Marco Andretti coming in and racing in ARCA. Now, one thing that we need to remember is Marco is going to be running the Indy 500 in 2024 with Andretti or attempting to qualify for the Indy 500, so he will be also focused on that in 2024. But overall, when I look at Marco Andretti getting the chance and opportunity to run in NASCAR, I think it is phenomenal and absolutely amazing. And again, it's going to be a big focus for him. It's going to be a really big change because for a majority of his career, Marco Andretti's been racing Indy cars, but with the experience he has from the SRX, I think that SRX experience is really going to help him out, and he's going to get a lot of opportunity to practice, some opportunities to qualify for races, and I think with how fast Cook Racing Technologies has been at ARCA as well, I think that Marco will be extremely fast and really, really competitive in 2024. So I'm excited about this. I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm really happy and glad to see that Marco Andretti will, in fact, be driving in NASCAR in 2024. I think this is amazing and great decision for him to get some more experience in 2024. Really excited about this and glad to see he'll be running in NASCAR in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Busch Light Clash. Now, a couple days ago, we talked about on the channel that they were not going to be allowing fans in for the Busch Light Clash on Saturday. Well, NASCAR has corrected this situation because last night they confirmed and announced that they will be allowing fans in for practice and for the heat races on Saturday. On top of that as well, you will not have to pay anything. It is going to be free admission. So if you're living in the area and you live in the LA area, you can get into the Los Angeles Coliseum on Saturday for free. Now, you will still have to pay for Sunday. You'll have to pay all the money that you already paid, but you get to go in for free on Saturday. This absolutely was the right call and right decision by NASCAR. Look, they absolutely made a massive mistake. I don't think they were planning to have fans in on Saturday, but when they got caught making the mistake they made, where they basically were not going to allow fans in, a lot of fans like myself were really, really frustrated and upset and called out NASCAR on this. But the fact that they've not only corrected the situation saying, hey, we're going to allow fans in on Saturday, well, we're actually going to not charge you anything, I think that is a great step in the right direction for NASCAR because we already know NASCAR has made some not great decisions over the last couple months, but they made a really good decision here. They corrected a situation, they corrected a problem, and they brought a really great solution along with it as well. I think this is a phenomenal decision, and I think that a lot of fans who were against the Clash being LA, they might have at least gained a little bit more respect back for the Clash. Now, this still could be the last year the Clash is at the Los Angeles Coliseum because the contract for the Los Angeles Coliseum only goes through 2024, I should say. But I believe that they made a good decision here to go ahead and bring the LA Coliseum back. I really will at least put the fans back in. I think it makes a lot of sense here. I think not charging fans to get into the stands is a really good decision on NASCAR's end. I think they made the right call here. I'm really happy about this, and I think this is a massive dub by NASCAR to let the fans in. Very happy about this, and nonetheless glad to see that the fans will not be restricted from going in, and they are allowed into the stands at the Clash for Saturday. Really great and awesome decision on NASCAR's end. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott. Now, we talked about this on the channel a few weeks ago, but back in November, Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott revealed that they both had shoulder surgery. And we had some kind of worries that maybe they were going to miss the Clash at the Los Angeles Coliseum. Well, both drivers confirmed to the media yesterday, or a couple days ago, that they both are good to go to run at the Los Angeles Coliseum. And there are no relief drivers on standby for both Denny Hamlin and for Chase Elliott. This is really, really good news because I believe Denny Hamlin did for sure have a relief driver on standby for him, especially Denny Hamlin, because his shoulder surgery was a little bit later than Chase Elliott. We never really had ever indication that Chase Elliott was going to miss the Los Angeles Coliseum race. We knew that maybe he would have a standby driver just in case it took a little longer. But Chase led his shoulder surgery starting a little bit earlier than Denny Hamlin. We were not too concerned that Chase was going to miss. As for Denny Hamlin, there was a lot of legitimate conversation that he was potentially going to miss the race at the Los Angeles Coliseum because his shoulder surgery had not gone as well. He mentioned it back in November during the awards banquet. He basically mentioned that the race of the recovery had not been going as well as he had initially hoped, and he took a lot longer for the recovery to go through. There were a lot of rumors that Eric Almirola could have been a potential substitute for him. There were rumors maybe Chandler Smith could have come in. I even saw people mentioning like Carl Edwards as a potential rumor driver that could have replaced him or substituted for him for the event. But I am very happy and glad to see that we are not going to have to worry about that anymore, and I'm glad to see that Denny Hamlin and, of course, Chase Elliott are good to go to run the Busch Light Clash at the Los Angeles Coliseum, because I think it would have been a massive loss for the event if your most popular driver and one of the best drivers, if two of your best drivers in the field and two drivers who have a lot of fans were not going to be at the event. Probably less people were going to show up because of that. So I'm really happy about this. I'm glad that both drivers are good to go to run the Los Angeles Coliseum. We're not going to have to worry about what they're doing and their health, among other things. Very happy and glad to see that both drivers are good to go for the Los Angeles Coliseum event that will take place here in a couple of weeks. There's only 2 weeks away from now, so nonetheless, glad to see both drivers are good to go for the race, for the Clash. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we do have a couple Kyle Busch stories to get into. The first one is a very good one, is that Kyle Busch does have another new sponsor for 2024, and that is Zone Premium Nicotine Pouches. Now, this is going to be an anchor partner for Kyle Busch in 2024, and they will sponsor him in the Daytona 500, and of course, at the Busch Light Clash at the LA Coliseum, they'll sponsor him as well, and they will sponsor him, I think, for a majority of races in 2024. If you're also a Kyle Busch fan like myself, here's some really good news for you. Kyle Busch is sold out on sponsorship for 2024, which I think is a massive and a major positive for Kyle Busch, because we already know, we'll talk about Joe Gibbs here and how things ended here in just a little bit. We already know that Kyle Busch is struggling to find sponsorship at the end of 2022. This is a really great move for him to have a new sponsor coming into play. And a lot of people are wondering where this company is coming from. It's coming from ITG. Obviously, ITG has been a little bit of lawsuits. I believe it was with the Winston Cup Museum, if I'm not mistaken, over the course of the last 2 months. But still, I'm really glad that Kyle Busch does have a new sponsor going into 2024. Now, this likely confirms that 3Chi is no longer going to be around, which I think is very unfortunate. I know that 3Chi has kind of considered coming back in the future. I know RCR would love to have 3Chi come back, but with all the sponsors Kyle Busch has, remember he's got Rebel Bourbon sponsoring this year. You've also got Cheddar sponsoring, Lucas Oil sponsoring, and now you've got this new Zone company coming into play to sponsor. It's really awesome and amazing to see that Kyle Busch does have a lot of new sponsors. And of course, Global Industries as well, which is going to be who worked at Austin Hill last year, is working with Kyle Busch in 2024. So I'm very happy about this. And again, I think it's really good for the sport when a driver doesn't have to worry about sponsorship and they are fully sponsored for 2024. Cheddar's, I believe, has a multi-year deal with RCR. They signed a multi-year extension. We already know, of course, those other companies signed multi-year extensions, and now Kyle Busch is big anchor sponsor, which, again, they didn't confirm exactly how many races they're going to sponsor Kyle, but I have to imagine it's going to be for maybe 10 to 12 races is my prediction for Kyle Busch going into the season. So I think it will be for a majority and a lot of these races in 2024. So nonetheless, I'm very happy about this. I'm glad to see, once again, I think it's really good for the sport when we can keep and bring new sponsors in, even if they're not like the most notable sponsorships, where there's rumors that this company was going to come into play. I am very glad and happy nonetheless, so to see that Kyle Busch does in fact have a new official sponsor going into 2024. Even if he is losing some sponsorship from 3Chi, I think overall this is a very fantastic move. And I'm very happy and glad to see that we will see a new sponsor for Kyle Busch, at least for the next couple, at least for a ton of races in 2024. Very happy and glad to see this overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about another chapter of the Matt DiBenedetto free agent saga. So let's go back to the end of December. On December 27th, Matt DiBenedetto indicated that he had a ride for 2024. Private reporter on Twitter had indicated that he was going to be headed to AM Racing in 2024 on a full-time basis. Then Bob Pockrass had said that AM Racing rumor was not really true. Then we started hearing some chatter and rumors that maybe he was going to be headed to Kaulig Racing in 2024. But Bob Pockrass yesterday put out a tweet in regards to Matt DiBenedetto saying that it still be to be determined on Matt DiBenedetto, indicating that Matt DiBenedetto does not have a ride currently at the moment. He thought he had something lined up for 2024, but according to Bob Pockrass, it sounds like nothing has materialized, which kind of indicates and confirms that Matt DiBenedetto will likely not be headed to Kaulig Racing in 2024. My best guess is the reason he's not going there in 2024 is because of the fact that he did not have a sponsor, or a sponsor maybe backed out perhaps, is potentially one of the reasons why he is not going there in 2024, because he's been rumored to go there this year, and it sounds like he's not going there, which is really unfortunate, because let's talk about this Matt DiBenedetto saga. Obviously, putting a check name, basically putting a pen emoji out in one of your tweets and saying you had a ride sign and then you don't have a ride sign is going to make you look bad. Now look, I like Matt DiBenedetto a lot. I like him quite a bit. But he has also made a lot of mistakes as a driver. And that's one of the reasons why, kind of similar to Brett Moffitt, unfortunately, he's not been able to find a ride for this season, because he could have stayed with Rackley in 2024. He absolutely could have, or maybe Rackley was going to get rid of him. But I imagine that Rackley Racing wanted to keep him around. And unfortunately, at this particular point, I don't really know where we go for here with Matt DiBenedetto. I really don't know where he ends up going in 2024. If he doesn't go to AM Racing or doesn't go to Kaulig, because Kaulig Racing really was one of the best opportunities he would have had if he had gone there. And unfortunately, that deal sounds like may have fallen through. You look at some other organizations that haven't announced anything at this particular point. I look at teams, there's a couple other teams that, could be available. You got, like I said, you have Rick Ware Racing in the 15 car. We know there's a few races that are still available, but I have to imagine that is not a full-time ride, because again, the 15, we know Grawl is going to be there for 25 races next year. So that ride is not going to be a full-time seat in 2024. I go to the Xfinity Series, maybe he goes part-time with AM Racing this year, but at this point, I really don't know if he is going to end up there. There is still a potential that Hattori Racing could be sticking around. We don't know what's going on with that team. There's been rumors that they could also be shutting down at the end of the season. So at this particular point, I really don't know what happens to Matt DiBenedetto, but I can tell you right now, it sounds like he's not going to Kaulig, which again is very unfortunate. And the fact that we're getting closer and closer to the end of the silly season and the off season, because like I've already talked about in this episode a lot, but the Clash is literally 2 weeks from Sunday, and we have cars are on track 2 weeks from tomorrow. So at this point, the fact that he doesn't have anything signed is not a good look for him, and it really sucks for a lot of Matt DiBenedetto fans, because I know a lot of Matt DiBenedetto fans like myself are kind of wondering, where is he going to end up in 2024? And at this point, I think Matt DiBenedetto, I don't even know if he's going to race this year, at least full-time. He may have a part-time ride. He may go somewhere in 2024. We all thought he was going to Kaulig. My sponsor might have backed out. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I've been hearing that rumor. So One thing I will say when it comes to Matt DiBenedetto is he's made a lot of mistakes, but he's also a talented enough driver where he should be racing. I've talked about it a lot. He's a good enough driver to be a serviceable guy. He's not like a Kyle Larson level driver. He's not like Kyle Busch. He's not like Chase Elliott. He's on the same level as a guy like Bubba Wallace, which is not a bad thing considering Bubba Wallace just had a career year in the Cup Series. I know he didn't win a race, but he finished in the top 10 in points for the first time. I think Matt DiBenedetto does deserve to race this year, but it sounds like currently at this moment and right now, he doesn't at least have a seat currently for 2024, which again is very, very unfortunate because I believe he should be racing in 2024. He's a good enough driver, capable of it, but right now it sounds like he will not be going to Kaulig Racing in 2024, which is really disappointing because I would have loved to see him go into Kaulig, but I do believe that his chances of getting rides are drying up very, very quickly as we're getting closer to the end of the silly season for 2023 to 2024 and also the off season as well. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we already talked about Kyle Busch does have a new sponsor, and he's filled up with sponsors for 2024. Jordan Bianchi put out a tweet and an article yesterday where he actually got to speak to Kyle Busch about a little bit of how things ended at Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch actually opened up quite a bit about that. He says that Joe Gibbs did not try to sell him. What he said is that did Joe Gibbs try to sell me? No. It kind of went into how the Oracle deal came into play. He basically said that Oracle had signed a $500 million contract with Formula One, and apparently Joe Gibbs was all in on the Oracle basket. But as Kyle Busch mentioned, we already talked about this, Oracle was looking to sponsor Kyle Busch and were looking to maybe sponsor Joe Gibbs Racing, but basically Kyle was like, no, that's not going to happen. So then basically Kyle said you need to look on the outside, you need to be looking for outside sponsorship to bring in, and Joe apparently didn't do that. And Kyle Busch then said that they offered a contract for him to race their sponsor list so he can stay in the number 18 car in 2024. And stick around. And he said with the 15 years that he had been at Joe Gibbs, he really didn't believe that he should have had a race sponsor list and didn't believe that he should have had to take money out of Joe Gibbs' pocket with how successful he had been. This also kind of confirms the rumor about that Oracle. We talked about it a couple years ago that Oracle had been the main sponsor that Joe Gibbs Racing had been looking at back, I think, in June and July. There was a lot of conversations with that brand. But when that sponsorship fell through with Oracle, it all confirmed that at this point, Kyle Busch was going to be leaving Joe Gibbs Racing. But it's interesting to hear that basically Joe Gibbs really didn't try to sell him as much. Now, Joe Gibbs does things a lot different than a lot of other organizations. They go after full season sponsors. RCR, on the other hand, which Kyle Busch talked about the sales team being a lot better, RCR, than Joe Gibbs, basically they go after like a bunch of different smaller sponsorships than full-time sponsors. And unfortunately nowadays that is what's changing in the market when it comes to sponsorship, is that they're not paying for full season sponsors anymore. They're paying for like a few races at a time. That's how the market is currently working at this particular moment. And it's interesting that Joe Gibbs wanted to keep Kyle Busch around. I know that they tried to keep him, it sounds like. But it's interesting that Kyle Busch kind of says that Joe really didn't try to sell him. Which, again, it's interesting that he couldn't sell a two-time champion after M&M's left. And we all thought, like back in 2022, that there was no way that Kyle Busch was going to leave that team and go over to RCR. But you look at what Kyle Busch has done since leaving Joe Gibbs, and obviously you look at Ty Gibbs too. We all talk about this. Ty Gibbs is a lot cheaper of a driver, and Ty brings a sponsor that does sponsor for majority of the year. I think Monster Energy sponsored for, I think, half the year last year, and there was a lot of success that came from Ty Gibbs in his first year. Yes, he didn't win a race, but he did overall a very, very solid job, but expecting a driver like Ty Gibbs to do what Kyle Busch had done in that car is kind of very difficult to do. And Ty put up some similar stats to Kyle Busch, except Kyle did win a race and actually make the postseason. But you look at the second half of the year, and it's kind of similar. So when I look at this, they had a driver that was a lot younger and a lot cheaper. Now, that's not saying that they couldn't have kept Kyle Busch. They absolutely could have kept Kyle Busch. And I think KBM would probably still be around right now if not for this thing happening. As for when it comes to Kyle Busch at RCR, I think Kyle Busch also needed a new breath of fresh air. Look, Kyle Busch basically needed to go somewhere else because he'd been struggling at Joe Gibbs the last couple of years. In his first year with RCR in year number 1, Kyle Busch has had a ton of success. He had a 3-win season. He was able to make it to the round of 12 in his first year at RCR. And I think that this team really wants to build on and win more races. Now, obviously, I've predicted Kyle's only going to get 1 or 2 wins potentially this season. But I think that Kyle Busch will be a lot more consistent. And for the first time in probably a decade, probably since 2013 or 2014, they had a chance to win a championship. The last time they really had a legitimate shot at winning was with Kevin Harvick. I know Ryan Newman made the Final Four in 2014, but let's be realistic. Ryan Newman should not have made the Final Four in 2014. He got very lucky because Jeff Gordon kind of got screwed out of getting in there. Ryan Newman kind of was the reason that Jeff Gordon got screwed, and also the Brad Keselowski situation with Jeff Gordon ended up happening. Had Jeff Gordon won Martinsville, he would have made the Final Four. But we're not going to get into that too much. Anyways, Kyle Busch realistically has done a lot of great things already with RCR, and there's been a lot of success up to this point in his first year with the organization and the team. So I think when you look at Kyle Busch, you look at everything that he's accomplished in year 1 with the team, I think he's going to be one of the best, continue to go up there. I think he wants to win more races than Dale Earnhardt. And you look at Kyle Busch, and he's getting right now to the peak of his career. I wouldn't be surprised if he does rack off and win a ton of races this year. And not having that pressure of having to worry about sponsorship, because you look at what he's got here at RCR, he's got a lot of sponsors raking in and coming in and working with him currently at this particular moment in point. So I think when you look at Kyle Busch, you look at everything that he's accomplished in year 1 with the team. I know he didn't win the final 21 races, and he was very consistent the second half of the season. But I think it's interesting that, he's fully sponsored for the year. He's got new sponsors coming into play. And now we know that Joe Gibbs could have tried to sell him with smaller sponsorship packages. And we're seeing that a lot more now because FedEx, they're not sponsored for the full season anymore. Mavis is coming in and sponsoring for a majority of races as a matter of fact. So when I look at this move overall in general, and I look at Kyle Busch going to RCR in year number 1, he was very successful. And I think Kyle Busch does want to go on and win more races down the road. So overall, I think it's a very interesting story and kind of interesting to see that Kyle Busch kind of reveals some more details in regards to the Joe Gibbs saga, which we've been talking about for the last couple of years, and more details do continue to come out in regards to the JGR cycle. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, and if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Link description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Do you think that Joe Gibbs could have done a better job trying to sell Kyle Busch? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think Matt DiBenedetto will have a seat in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel will be multiple videos dropping on the channel throughout the day. Sunday, same thing. Monday, there'll be likely only be one video dropping. If there's enough news that breaks, we'll talk about it on the channel. But as of right now, I'm not entirely sure. There's a lot of content dropping. We'll have the Xfinity Series and truck lineup videos likely dropping in the next week or so as more continues to get revealed in regards to that. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.